This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. You know, it's been one of the slowest off seasons I've ever had as somebody who covers the Cleveland Browns. Now, I started doing coverage on YouTube in 2018. I've been a fan my whole life. But you look at all those off seasons, something crazy was happening, right? 2018 offseason, the Browns had the first overall pick and the fourth overall pick. They draft the quarterback. They trade for Jarvis Landry. All kind of craziness going on, right? 2019 offseason, Odell Beckham gets traded here. Huge deal. Remember, this ain't Odell Beckham after playing a year off. You know, this was Odell Beckham like in his prime, we thought, that we were trading for. Unfortunately, those things never panned out, but the excitement was crazy. Excitement was unreal. Then 2020 offseason was the pandemic, one of the most surreal periods of anybody in my age's lifetime. 2021 was the buildup of the playoff run, right? The Browns had just made the playoffs. We were super excited about that, talking about the steps we're going to make. There was the rumor that the Browns were looking to trade Baker Mayfield for Aaron Rodgers. Like, all kind of weird stuff was happening in that offseason. And in 2022, we move off of Baker Mayfield, one. We move on to Deshaun Watson, two, and make a bunch of other changes around it. And this year is the first year where the offseason hasn't been up here because we're super excited. It's been, it's just been happening, right? Like, I think people are starting to get excited as football nears around because we love football. And I think people, the closer we are to playing football, are starting to realize, oh, okay, this team should be good. But also, people are burnt out by being overly hyped at this stage because we've been hyped up for the last 5 years, right? And it's not necessarily our fault. Any fan base that went through what we went through would have been hyped up in those periods. Like, I don't care what anybody says. You get the first and fifth overall pick, you're going to be hyped up for that next season. That's how it works, right? You get Odell Beckham in his prime, you're going to be hyped up for the next season, especially if you think you already found your quarterback, which the Browns were at, right? You're going to be hyped up no matter what fan base you are. You go to the playoffs and win a playoff game against your arch rival, that offseason is going to be off the chain. You're going to be hyped up all offseason. And then, I mean, the pandemic, nobody was hyped up with that, but we had nothing to do during the pandemic other than to be hyped up for our team. So there was that in that offseason as well. And then last year's offseason, I mean, we traded for a whole new quarterback. Like, and then got rid of a whole nother one. Like, yes, people were going to be excited or at least anticipatory towards the season. And this year, it's this smell in the air. And the smell is something that is a familiar smell in Pittsburgh. It's a familiar smell in Baltimore. It's a familiar smell even in Cincinnati. And that's the smell of nothing changing. And not in a bad way, right? The Browns have made some small changes along the coaching staff in the grand scheme of things, right? When I say small changes, I'm not saying that getting rid of a defensive coordinator and getting rid of a special teams coordinator is not a big deal, but it's not the big deal that getting rid of your coaching staff would be, right? The entire staff. Nothing like that. Same coach, same GM, same quarterback. And I'm telling you, it may not feel like it to y'all, but this is the best thing that could have happened for this franchise, because the good teams, they're not excited in May. The good teams, they're not excited in April. The good teams, They're not excited in March, right? The bad teams are. The teams that are hoping on draft picks to bail them out of mediocrity. Those are the teams that get overexcited in March, April, and May. The teams that have nothing but false hope to live on. Those are, you notice now, the fan base that's getting excited right now, it's not the Browns. Even though, like, look, we're getting excited because it's football, but it's the Steelers. And that's not a coincidence. The Steelers really have nothing but hope right now, right? Like, they hope that these changes are going to be good. They hope that these draft picks are going to be good. They hope that they have a quarterback, but they don't know. And to an extent, the Browns don't know if they have a quarterback, but they have a much better ideal that their quarterback's going to be good in the NFL than the Steelers do, because Deshaun Watson's a significantly more accomplished quarterback in the NFL than Kenny Pickett. He's a significantly more accomplished quarterback in the ACC than Kenny Pickett. He's a significantly more accomplished quarterback in college football than Kenny Pickett. Like, name it. Deshaun Watson's more accomplished. It's not even a competition. We're at that position. It's a weird one, right? And it might make you feel weird for feeling this way, because for 20 years, we felt like this. You know, at the season, we were all the way up here in March, in May, in April. But the Browns ain't in the XFL. They don't play football in the spring. You don't want to be your most excited about the team in the spring or even in the summer. You want to be your most excited about this team in the winter. And we ain't never been that. But for 1 year, okay, we ain't never gotten to that point. And part of getting to that point is being able to have stability. And whether you like it or not, I mean, there are going to be people who kick and scream. Look, there are people who want Mike Tomlin fired every year. There are people who want John Harbaugh fired every year. There are people who want Zach Taylor fired every year. There are people who even want Bill Belichick fired every year. These fans exist for every fan base. Just because somebody in the comment section says that Kevin Stefanski or whatever coach should get fired, don't mean it's true. Don't mean it's actually what's better for the team. Because history tells us it's usually not. Changing head coaches usually doesn't warrant a bunch of success. It's not been a successful strategy for anybody. But yet we always want to do it when things go bad, even though it's proven to not be successful, especially in this city. But my point being, no matter who the coach or how good the coach, there's always going to be some people that want the coach fired, because that's just what people do. We don't got to listen to them. Stability is important. What this team finally has is stability. We know what to expect out of Andrew Berry in the draft. We know what kind of players Andrew Berry likes to go for in the draft. We know what the Browns process is. So much of covering the Browns is rediscovering process. Oh, what's John Dorsey like? Oh, okay, now we got to throw that all out. What does Ray Farmer like? Okay, well, now we got to throw it out. What does it's a constant flux of GMs and head coaches, and what did this guy want, and what are we going to run here? 3-4-4-3. We've had these conversations to death in the city. Like, I think I was 6 years old, I learned what a 3-4 was, because we kept firing dudes who ran 3-4, and then hired dudes who ran 4-3, and then going back. I learned about all these things because the Browns have been terrible from the top on to the bottom. Say what you want about Jimmy Haslam, and there's a lot to say about Jimmy Haslam, like, no doubt. Not a man who leaves a trail of purity behind him. But you can't lie. He's been good for the team for the last few years, at least, right? He had his whole mess that he made with Hugh and all of that. But ever since he made that mess, he hasn't made another. He's let the right people make the decisions. He hired a coach of the year. He hires somebody who everybody respects in the NFL as an executive, and they have a quarterback. And we hear from Jimmy less and less. And I think that's fine. He's been all right. He's been doing what he's supposed to do. We all wanted Jimmy just to go away for a little while. He's done that. Got to give his respect where respect is due. And Since that has been done, the Browns have not been firing guys in and out. We got a head coach about to have his 4th year here. That ain't happened in so long. We have a GM entering his 6th year with the organization, 4th consecutive as the GM. Well, I mean, like he's president of football or something like that. But GM is what we know him as in Andrew Berry. And now we're entering our 2nd year with Deshaun Watson. And this is where it's really important, the quietness of this offseason. It seems like we traded for Deshaun Watson 5 years ago. How much conversation we've had to have about Deshaun Watson. How many things we've had to learn about Deshaun Watson against our will. Like nothing I've learned about Deshaun Watson's personal life has been by me asking. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Everything I have learned about that man's personal life or his alleged personal life has been against my will. Right? And that's because his situation was splattered on the news and was a big story. Not just a football story, a big news story. This year, nobody's really talking about him. Nobody's really talking about the Browns. Deshaun Watson last year had to go through this whole process, get traded, go through a legal process, get acclimated with the team, and then go through another one of the league's legal processes to figure out how long he would be suspended. Look at all that stuff he had to deal with in between March and July. And then he got suspended and didn't play until what? October? No, not even October. December or November. It was November. That's not a normal season, man. It's impossible to replicate your normal routines under those circumstances. Now, Deshaun Watson, for better, gets that opportunity to normalize himself into the routines and to be what he normally is, right? He gets his normal offseason program. Now he's going to get his normal OTA program. And then he gets to camp, he gets his normal preseason program. We're not worried about should he play in the preseason or not. We're not having those debates. We're not having debates about who the week 1 starter is. We're not installing a different offense for Jacoby Brissett because he's going to start week 1. We are just playing football and Deshaun Watson's the quarterback. This has been one of the most quiet off seasons I've had here since covering the Browns. I think that's good. I think even though it won't be better for me and my bank account, right? Like them years when we was doing crazy stuff in the offseason, that was great for my bank account. But even though it's not going to be better for my business, it is better for the team that we're not so hyped up during this period. Because again, man, let's look around. Like, do you see Chiefs fans all hyped up in May? Do you really see them all hyped up in May? Like any fan base that's been rooting for a team that's been good for a very long time, they're not doing this. You know, we're seeing Steelers fans do what we used to do. It's because they're in the same position we used to be in. Now, they might get out of it faster. They probably will. But that's where we at. So if this offseason has seemed boring to you, if it seemed like I haven't had a ton of content to talk about, that's fine. That's okay. That's what this team needed. All that tumultuous garbage they had going last year, all that nonsense they had going in the offseason last year, that wasn't good for nobody. Now it's quiet. People get to think, play football. That's it. I think it's going to reflect on how this team plays during the year. It's going to be less chaos in that locker room, and I think it's going to be better for everybody. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Has this quiet offseason been something that's been feeling ominous to you? Or has it been a calmness of, hey, it might be all right this time? Because that's what I'm feeling. Let me know what y'all think.